Dr. Edmondson, give me 1 second. I'm having some audio issues. I want to make sure we get that squared away. So I apologize. Give me 1 second. Dr. Edmondson, give me 1 second. Okay. I believe. Dr. Edmonds, can you just to make sure I'm checking the audio system? Can you say something so I can get some audio from the actual meet itself? Okay. All right, I can hear you. I'm just making sure our general public through our YouTube live stream can hear you. There is a slight delay between what we do and what YouTube live sees, so I'm giving it a second to see how that's going. So, yes. All right, I can hear you. I'm just making sure our general public through our YouTube live stream. The YouTube live link is on our school district website, romulsk12.org. There's an event that has the name Growing Up in Jim Crow Era in Alabama, and the link is right on there. The event is about halfway down our main page. Yes. All right, I'm just making sure our general public through our YouTube live stream. The YouTube live link is. All right, I am. All right, that's right. For those people that are watching, I appreciate all the text messages. I know that there's not any audio.
I was just saying to David and Ben before we came on that this presentation would not go exactly as we had planned it, and to be ready to adjust to whatever goes wrong. However, I didn't think it would be so soon in the presentation.
But that's technology.
Yes, sir. We were telling David how important he was to us 2 weeks ago and at a board meeting, and his head was like this. Oh, hold on, I'm sorry. His head was like this, whoop, 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 whoop. And now he's eating a dose of humble pie. So it's a little bit like, I cracked myself up.
The humble pie is kind of dependent on how fast or how slowly you eat it.
Now listen here. I mean, while people are, you
Okay.
got to make sure you don't use any
You are live.
that I use that you've given me that I use here. So if you use them out here, they're all going to know that I got them from you. So just be careful on what we show people.
But
Like I'm just saying.
is that a bad source?
The public can hear us now.
They can hear us?
Yes, the public can hear us now.
Public can hear us. Were they able to hear the beginning, or nobody could hear that either?
I might as well say it again because I don't know nobody besides the people in this Google Meet could hear it.
Okay, well, first of all, we apologize for the delay. That's part of technology. And I want to thank publicly David Cooper, our Director of Integrated Technology, for helping problem solve this for us and get us back on track. Now, to all the students that are out there and the staff, thank you so much. And the community members, thank you for being a part of this, this history lesson that we're about to get. I'm very humbled to present my father, Reverend Dr. Clarence Edmondson. I have my friends, some of my friends here. Some of you are my friends, staff members too. It's just very humbling that I've been given this opportunity yet again to be able to present my father. His wife, his lovely wife is here, is a very good friend of mine, dear friend of mine. Miss Deborah Edmondson is here as well. And my son logged off because you know what? He said that his mom will kill him if he doesn't do school right now. So it is what it is. And I don't want to delay this any further, Dad. You still have the 45 minutes. The goal is to have him present and we can ask questions. Those who are on YouTube Live, feel free to give your questions to David Cooper. He's monitoring them. Those of us that are on Google Meet, you know, all we have to do is put it in the chat and we can say it. But we want him to present first. And I can tell you about my father that there's no question that's off limits, none. In terms of language, you might hear him go, you know, I'm direct. We may not use the N-word. We might use nigger because that was what was used when he was growing up. No need to sugarcoat and hide because we got enough of that goes on. So I told him, feel free to give your presentation as long as I give the caveat that you might hear some things that you're not used to hearing. We took out a slide of lynching. There was an actual lynching of the picture. We took it out just to be sensitive, but this is real. This is American history. This is real, and this is what we're shielded from. So I don't ask him to sugarcoat anything. Present your story, Dad. Love you, Deborah. Thanks again. You're on.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you. To the superintendent, administrative personnel, to the teachers, the students, the business community, the community of Romulus, Dr. Coleman, the staff members, and whatever family members of mine that are listening. I say to you, good afternoon, and I follow that very rapidly with a deep thank you very much for the sacrifice that you have made that our lives could intersect at this time and in this space. Hopefully, as a result of this presentation, it is my hope and my sincere desire that at least one student will be encouraged by this presentation. David?
I'll let.
Okay, David.
Give me 1 second. It's gonna come up. You are all set.
Okay, thank you. I had asked my son to send out and have you do your due diligence by looking up Jim Crow, because I didn't want to explain it to you, because if you looked it up, you'll get a better understanding of Jim Crow than if I tried to explain it to you. But I introduced you to Jim Crow, and I follow it with a paraphrase from Maya Angelou. I say, Jim Crow, you may trod me in the very dirt, but still, like dust, I'll rise. Next slide, please. Now, in the South, Alabama, where I was born, and let me review that with you if I could. My name is Clarence Edmondson. I was born in Fairfield, Alabama on March 19, 1935, by the hands of Dr. Will Drake, who was the only physician we had in Fairfield, Alabama. So as far as the social ladder went, there was Reverend Williams and Dr. Drake, who were at the top of the social ladder in Black Fairfield, Alabama. And that's the bulk of my discussion today will be on my life and the struggle I had being a Negro in Alabama under the Jim Crow law. So the sign you see before you now was a common kind of sign that we saw. And if you read it, you see it says no dogs, no Negroes, and no Mexicans. And then the other one says colored served in rear. And then the restrooms and the drinking fountains all had signs up on them, over them, that said colored and white. That was something you grew used to. But I hope to give you an example of an occurrence of all of these different situations that you see on this sign. I hope to show you how they occurred in my life. Okay, David. This is my mother and father, Ben Edmondson and Mamie Edmondson. Ben was born in 1889. Now, most of you, your grandparents might have been born there, but this is my father. My mother was born in 1900. My father was a coal miner, probably a fourth grade education. But he looked at me one day and he said, son, I go down into this mine so you won't have to. My mother, Mamie James, never worked, and she had maybe a sixth grade education. But what I loved about my mother, she had to pass a test on the Constitution and then pay a poll tax to be able to vote. But she was a registered voter. Next. Now, this is the early years in my community under Jim Crow. Ms. Robertson, but this school housed us from the fourth grade to the seventh grade. And from the seventh grade, then we went into the high school. I still remember one of my seventh grade teachers. I still remember parts of Thanatopsis that we had to memorize in the seventh grade. I can still recite part of that to you, and that was probably 70 or 75 years ago. Okay, Dave, please. Now, this is high school. This is Fairfield Industrial High School. And I put emphasis on that industrial because I'm going to explain that to you. But first, again, as I did with my community, I want to let you know what the white school had as compared to the black school. Now remember, Alabama was a state that had the law separate but equal. I want you to see in Alabama what separate but equal meant. Now, in the industrial, I'll get to the white school. In the industrial high school, you see the little building under the main building? That building was built especially for one of the trades. So when you got in high school, that was the thought or the theory or whatever, that blacks could not go off to college. Blacks could not learn academics. So you were prepared for a trade so you could go into a trade in life because it wasn't anticipated that you would go off to college. So at the Industrial High School of Fairfield, you could take auto mechanic, home economics, beauty culture, cleaning, dyeing and pressing, tailoring, shoe repair, upholstery to get you ready to come out of school and go into your own business. Now, one thing I didn't like I really didn't like, the superintendent periodically would come to visit us in high school. And without fail, we were all called into the auditorium and we had to sing Negro songs. But E.J. Oliver, our principal, knew what it took to, to live peaceably and to get whatever things he could get for us as students, whatever compromises he had to make, he made them readily because he didn't consider his pride. He considered what could he get for his students. Now, we learned that later, but during the actual process, I really didn't like it. Now, here's what the color school had. We had no school bus, and some kids lived 2 miles away, as far as 2 miles away. Any books we got, if you were one of the better students, you went down to the white school and you got their books and brought them back to the industrial house. Now, if you were chosen to go down, there was a chance you were going to be spit on and called nigger. But this was some of the better students that went down. If you, I guess, if you were not one of the better students, then you didn't experience this. So I don't know whether it was good to be a better student or not. But when you got the book, sometimes pages were missing. They'd have nigger written in them. You know, it's like the right and the left, and he would hit it with the left hand, pass it to his right hand, and he would say, "Come on, schoolboy, what's wrong? You can't." And I was aching so bad after that first night. I knew I couldn't last on that job. So they would give you 15-minute breaks, 15 in the morning, 15 in the afternoon. So I would take my 15 and I would go watch the spot welder. And then I would go and give him 15 minutes to let me spot weld. I'd give him 50. And then I went to the foreman and told the foreman that I could spot weld. He said, well, show me. And I did. And I was moved immediately from a labor to a spot welder, making far more money and less labor. And then I wasn't satisfied with that. I used to go watch the arc welders. And finally, I was moved up to an arc welder, and that was the highest paying job. This was called the frame factory. And so I moved up to an arc welder because I knew if I wanted, during the summer, if I didn't make enough money to go back to school, school wasn't going to be available for me. So that was always my highest priority, is to get a job during the summer that would allow me to go back to school. And then I found out they started recruiting college students to come to New Jersey, go either to North Carolina, Connecticut, and pick tobacco, or go to New Jersey and wait tables. And I chose to go to New Jersey, and I was taught how to wait tables. And then I started going each summer to New Jersey to wait tables because, again, if I didn't make that money during the summer, I knew going back to college, because my father died when I was 14, and he died on a Saturday where he had promised to take me fishing for the very first time. And I saw his death. It was a tragic death for me. He had an aortic aneurysm, and it burst on him in the bathroom. My sister by then was a nurse, so what I saw in that bathroom was my sister holding my father and blood coming out of him everywhere. The bathtub, the commode, the floor was all filled with blood. It's what I saw, and I'm just sharing that with you. I carried that with me for a long time too. It was just a tragic sight for me.
All right, let me stop. A friend of mine said, I think the name was Burlap. Burlap.
Burlap, yeah, thank you. Yeah,
That's a good friend, James Kern, a good buddy of mine. He put it burlap sack.
Yeah,
Dr.
burlap.
Coleman, that
Yeah, I was out with my older sister, and they were saying, and this material is burlap, and they were saying, she said, what is burlap? I said, croaker sack, and then she knew exactly, and she was comfortable with it. So we're in the South. What you Northerners are calling burlap, we call croaker sack, because usually it made some kind of sack that we put something into. And
okay,
so it was a long
hold on, Dad, hold on. First of all, I don't know if this is a student or a teacher, just they're disappointed in how the chat has gone. They were wondering if you could possibly host a private Google Meet for people that actually want to still be here.
You know, you were breaking up, Ben. I couldn't hear.
That's because I'm bouncing off of somebody. Everybody needs to mute theirs. Mute your screen. Mute your screen. Okay.
Mute my screen.
No, you're fine. You're fine. There's somebody, it might be a student, that said that he wants to know if you can do, or a teacher, a Google private meet, because he's very interested. He's gotten kicked off of the YouTube and he really wants to see this. He said, I really care. I'm personally very interested in how life was, as I have only seen movies depicting the Jim Crow era. So we have people texting and sending me emails saying they've been booted off and they want to see if you'll be available again. That's all. So think about it. And then secondly, Dr. Coleman asked this question to you, Dad. Said, first of all, he's humbled by your presence. How would you compare the climate during Jim Crow to what we are experiencing today?
Ooh. Well, that's a good question, too. I guess I would say that there are a lot of similarities, because Jim Crow has been there all the time. It was just hidden before. And our present leadership has allowed the monster to manifest itself. You know, there was a period where it was subdued, it was on the ground, but now it's come up again and first of all, it is more monstrous than it was during my day. It was kind of there, you know, it was a way of life for us in the South. But now there are people experiencing it that never experienced it before, and they don't know what to make of it and quite how to deal with it. So I guess that would be my answer, is that it has risen once again above ground, and it's more of a monster today than it was in my younger day.
Dr. Edmondson, I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
I've noticed in your presentation, you've continued to use beautiful phrases like, this was a loving teacher, this was a loving principal, this was a loving man.
Yeah.
And I read a book not too long ago about the Holocaust, and one of the survivors, he said, if you could lick my heart, it would poison you. How have you been able to maintain such a personal peace and a love about you after living through all this?
It wasn't all the time. May I see your name. Are you William? May I address you as William? Okay. It wasn't always there, and this is part of my presentation, but I don't know if I get there or not, so I'm going to share it with you. While I was practicing dentistry.
Yeah, we're trying to work on that now. We're trying to work on.
Okay.
Yes, Coop, send out
Okay.
a Google Meet for everybody.
Would you allow me? I don't want to preempt myself, William, but in order to
Ooh,
answer it,
that's deep.
I have to tell you the story, and I hope I get to tell that. And I'm glad. You know what? That's an astute observation on your part, because I wasn't aware of that. That I was using the word like that, but I didn't have to search for it. It just came out naturally, you know. So I hope I can get the rest of the story. Do you remember that used to be back in the day? Who was it? Paul. He's a radio announcer, and he said, "Now for the rest of the story." I can't remember. Can anybody remember his name? Paul. I don't remember his last name, but he would give the news, and then they said, "Now for the rest of the story." So I guess I'll just have
Paul
to say,
Harvey, sir.
Yes, Paul Harvey. Thank you, Paul Harvey. Yes. So hopefully I'll get to the rest of the story and have your answer encouched in that story. Anybody else? There's no, as I teach, and I have 4 virtual Zoom classes that I teach now. I tell those in the class, there's no such thing as a simple question. This may be a stupid, there's no such thing. If you don't understand it, it can't be a simple question. You're simple if you don't ask and you leave out without knowing. I had that happen to me in college once. A fellow came from Westfield Industrial High, and I were in college together, and the professor was up explaining something, and I didn't understand it. So I said, well, I don't worry. I will have that when we get out, because I didn't want to embarrass myself. I was supposed to be one of the A students in college. I didn't want to embarrass myself in front of the class by letting them know I didn't understand it. Well, when I got outside, I found out Ike didn't understand it either, and he didn't want to embarrass himself by saying he didn't understand it. So both of us never understood it. And guess what? On the test, we didn't know the answer. So there's no simple question. Don't leave ignorant when you don't have to.
I have a question for you, sir. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Renee Gowan. I was a former history teacher. And like the student that Dr. Edmondson referenced earlier, so much of what I've learned about Jim Crow has come from literature and movies. And it's so much more impactful to hear you speak about this. I wonder, in lieu of that, though, do you recommend any literature or movies or art that would work well in a classroom when we are teaching about Black history and about Jim Crow in particular?
Yes, especially Fred Douglass, the slave Fred Douglass. He's so descriptive. I mean, he has every detail of the brutality that he suffered as a slave. And I think it's just chilling. Even for me, when I read it, it was chilling when I saw the type of brutality that he was subjected to as a slave. That would be an excellent one because it really goes into the depth of being sold, of being separated as a family, and the kind of meetings they got. It's very descriptive, very descriptive. I would certainly recommend it.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else?
CE.
Yes, that's my daughter, by the way.
Okay.
She thinks she's grown now.
Listen, and your granddaughter told me to tell you she's here too.
Oh, okay.
Listen, wasn't there? I'm not sure if this is correct, but didn't you go to school and you worked your way through school, and only afterwards you found out, I believe, about Social Security? They didn't tell you because you might have been African American.
Yeah.
Okay, tell that one.
Okay. As I say, my father died. He was a coal miner, and I was 14. But at that time, Social Security would pay for your education. We never found out. Nobody ever told us. We were never informed. And so you heard me talk about how I had to work to make sure I could go to college. Never knew about it. But I asked the question of myself today, had it been paid for me, would I have been so intent on getting my education? Might not I have laid back some because it was being paid for me? I don't know the answer to that as I ask myself that question, but I just think somehow it would have been easier had we known that. Just didn't know. Nobody ever told us.
All right, I'm jumping back on. I'm going to say a couple of things. They're hard to hear, but I'm going to say it.
Okay.
Because that's how I am. You have a lot of kids that are very upset that they did not get to see this, even though you're still on, and we're going to jump back on, that are very upset because they were interested. But some of the comments coming from them is, this is so ghetto. This happens in our district where we get booted off of, not about you, but we get booted off. Our technology's not right. You know, why is it? I had a teacher just calling me just so almost in tears, crying, feeling like questioning why this could be happening, why this hasn't happened before, that all of a sudden that Google's not working, or not Google, that YouTube Live isn't working. So I'm getting a whole lot of people that are just very upset. They love your presentation. They're not upset with you, but primarily we serve kids of color. This is an opportunity for our kids who don't understand, who were listening, and then out, back on, out, off, on, further making them think that this is ghetto. And again, it's not you, it's the district. And here we go. So
may I make a suggestion to you, Superintendent?
Yes.
You heard me talk about working, how I came up working. How about we do this live?
Oh, you mean you come out here?
Yes.
Well, we did it before, and you know what happened? It was so emotional. It was just devastating. It was great, but it was so devastating. And you know, for me, it was devastating as your son, in a good way, but just devastating. I'll be glad to do that, but I mean, I think our kids, if they're demanding that, I'm going to ask you, we'll work it out where you can come back next week, period. They deserve it. And so does our staff. And so does the community that have missed it. I can't explain why, but I'm going to tell you this. Okay. Again, and this is me to my father, not everybody else, but all the stuff that's going on in our country, when this happens, people already are throwing out conspiracy. That's what I'm getting. That's what I'm getting now. Okay. With everything that's going on, now we have you presenting this, an African-American man who is got his doctoral degree, his son is running the district. Now we got this. So I'm getting hit with all these conspiracy stuff. That's what I'm getting. Absolutely. That's what I'm getting. People feeling like it's done purposely. That's pretty deep.
And you know what? I wanted to put my pride in the background, but since you're giving it, don't forget the Master of Divinity.
Yeah. So let's continue for those. How many people on YouTube, David? Oh, I didn't even see that. All right, let's go, Dad. Let's move on. And we're going to bring you back. I'm going to make a promise to the students first. I'll make a promise, and I wanted to bring you here. I've said that every time you've seen me. Everywhere I go as an educator, I'm bringing you because the story needs to be said. So we're going to continue, but I'm also going to give us a chance to do it again. Okay, I promise you, we'll do it again. But just continue. Let's go to the next slide. And again, apologies. I got to work with David Cooper. We're going to have to talk and make sure that this never happens again. Period. He's taking lumps and I'm taking lumps, the two of us. Just so that you know, Coop, it's me and you we're getting hit out there. All right, so go ahead, Dad. Move the next slide. Let's go to the next slide. We took a little break. Deb,
I think I finished it. Here's the next slide. Okay, so we're on the way to Birmingham on the bus. We're in the back of the bus now. We passed the amusement park. So now when you get to Birmingham, if you want to go to the movie, look to the slide on the left. That's what you see. When you go to the movie, you were always separated. Sometimes you couldn't go to the movie because it was an all-white movie. But when you went, you had to go upstairs to the balcony. And sometimes we accidentally wasted stuff down over that balcony accidentally. But you were separated, okay? So this was, understand now, under Jim Crow, this is what I was born into. Some people say, well, why didn't you object? Why didn't you? This was the only life I knew. And I was born into it. And so I never questioned it. It was what I was introduced into. And so I never questioned it. It was just life for me. Okay, now, when my mother would go into department stores, if she wanted to try on a hat, they would give her a net first. And she had to put a net over her head before she could try on a hat. And if I looked around and I wanted to go to the bathroom, I had to first look up and see if it was colored or white. Because if I went into white, that was breaking the law. Now look at these water fountains. I want you to take a good look at these water fountains, colored in white. You can see a vast difference. This is summer. See the man with the short sleeve shirt on? Look at what the whites have to drink out of. Look what the colors have to drink out of. Okay? Now, can you imagine, as you look at this, can you imagine what the colored bathroom looked like? They had cool water coming out of a fountain. The warm, hot water coming from the street source of water. But it was way of life for us. We came up that way, and that's what we had under Jim Crow. Now this is separate but equal. Here's a classic picture for you in Alabama of separate but equal. Now, according to the law in Alabama, this was separate but equal. And so it went throughout, it permeated, our community, our town, our state, this concept right here of separate but equal. Now, while we're shopping, my mother's shopping, you'd like to eat. You can't eat at any of the cafeterias or restaurants in Birmingham. You had to try and find somewhere if there were a Black restaurant that you could go and eat at. Otherwise, you went back home hungry. You paid on the front of the bus, walked back to the back, past the amusement park, went to Fairfield, and then you had to walk. We didn't have public transportation in our community. So when you got down to White Fairfield, you got off the bus and you had to walk maybe 2 miles to get up to where you lived. But that was separate but equal. Okay? All right. Okay, Dave. Okay, so now I've finished high school and I'm off to college. I'm off to Talladega College. I have to take Trailway bus because Greyhound is too expensive. Now I'm on my way. I get on this intrastate bus, I pay in the front, and I go in the back and sit. When we get to Sylacauga, it's what is called a rest stop. I have to get off the bus in the back, walk around to the back of the bus station to a window and get whatever food I want or drink I want out of the back window in the back of the bus depot. So I get what I want, I come back and I get on the bus and we go on into Talladega. Now, when I get to Talladega and I'm on campus, well, just let me say in general, Talladega in those days were what you would call an elitist black college. It was $700 a year. That was room and board, education, everything included for $700. I didn't have it, so I had a job when I went there, and that job was waiting tables. Let me tell you about waiting tables. We had about 200 students at Talladega, and so you knew everybody by first name and where they were from. So for breakfast, you got up and you got your tray and you went down the breakfast line. For lunch and dinner, 8 of you came in and sat at a table, and a waiter came out and served you. And if you wanted more food, that waiter went back in the kitchen, got more food, and brought it out to you. That same thing happened at dinner. Now, I was one of those waiters because that was called a scholarship. It was called a work scholarship. And they used to call me mean. You know, he's mean. I was mean because when they got up and left, they were all out on the grass, laughing, having fun. We had to clean up the table, prepared for the next meal. By the time we got out, everybody was gone to the class and gone. So I was jealous. Yes, I was jealous. I wish I didn't have to do that. And the same thing after dinner. You know, we had to clean up, and they'd be over in the girls' dormitory playing music and playing cards and whatever. But by the time we had cleaned up and got over there, everybody was gone. So yes, I was mean. But they called me chief at that time. And so one night we unloading the dishes in the kitchen, and the lady that was over us was called Miss Baycoat. And so one of the guys called me because we had rebelled against wearing ties. We had to wear a tie too. So we had decided we were going to boycott wearing ties. So the fellow addressed me, he said, "Hey, Chief." And he was asking me a question. But Miss Bako stepped from behind the door and said, "Oh, you the chief of all this meanness, huh?" I knew then I was going to be fired. So as soon as I cleaned up, we had rebelled against I lit out across campus. We had to wear to the student union building. And I told the person that operated that I needed a job. I'm going to need a job because I knew I was getting fired. And listen, one of the waiters who got fired was not able to finish because he didn't have the money, and he left Talladega. If I didn't get another job, I was going to have to leave too. So I was used to working, so I went over there, and I got a job over there. And over there, they said I was mean. You know why I was mean? They said I was mean. So I'm behind there sweating, fixing hamburgers for them and French fries for them, and they're out there playing pinochle and dancing and all of that. And now I don't get a chance to come out because my hours are until it closes. So I was jealous. I wasn't. I was kind of slopping the food to them, sliding it to them simply because I was jealous. But I had to work, so I had to do the priority. Do I want to be out and have fun out there? Or do I want to work so I can help pay my way out? So that's kind of how I made it through Talladega. I had another job too. The other job, Talladega was congregational school, so chapel was mandatory. So I had a job then checking a certain section. I had a certain section of the community there, and I would check them for attendance in college. And that was another way, another job I had to make sure that I was going to make enough money to stay at Talladega. But because you knew everybody that was there, um, my junior year in 1955, I'm going to do that. I think I'm going to do this with both slides. If you would, Dave, would you put up the next slide now? Okay, thank you. In my junior year, Arthurine Lucy applied to the University of Alabama. They had accepted her not knowing she was Black. grading period, they put the grades up on the wall. They knew about Talladega then. Okay. They knew about Talladega then. And after that, I was no longer intimidated, thinking that they were better than me and they had been better educated than I had been. Because when the rubber meets the road, we all learn something. Let's see. Okay. So by my senior year at Howard University, the best student in surgery, there was an internship available for you, 1 year internship for the best student in surgery. Now, I shouldn't have to tell you who won it, but I am, because you may have missed it. Well, I won that internship. And so for a year, I did oral surgery in what was called Freedman's Hospital. It was called Freedman's Hospital because it was a Black hospital and it was for Black people. But by having that internship, when I finished that, I really didn't want to set up a private practice because I was intimidated. I didn't feel secure enough to do that. So I went into the military. When I went into the military, because I'd had that internship along with the degree that I had, I went in as a captain. And immediately after my training, they shipped me over to Cambridge, England. And we stayed on the economy in Cambridge, England. As a matter of fact, the daughter that you hear every now and then was born there, and she has dual citizenship. So I was there from 62 to 65. And we got some opportunities there that I probably never would have gotten in life, because when you're flying into England, you've heard the song, The White Cliffs of Dover, where you find out they're not white, they're gray. I had a chance to visit the pyramids in Egypt, the Vatican City, the Leaning Tower of Pisa, the Eiffel Tower, Venice. I got a chance to visit all these places. But the mixed emotion for me now is that this was the time of the Birmingham riot, but I'm in Europe. So let me share the Birmingham riots. I'm sharing them vicariously because I wasn't there. I was in Europe, but let me share it with you in case you don't know about it. Okay, Dave. So back in '63, the chief of police was called Bull Connors. And so you can see some of the signs that are being held by the students. And Martin Luther King and A.D. King, the leaders of this boycott, were using children because they felt that the children would not be attacked as viciously as the adults would be. And so you see some of the signs that the kids have up there. Okay, next. But for the kids, here's what happened. They turned the dogs loose on them and they sprayed them with hose where they had the powerful water coming out. Now remember, all they were asking for was their civil right to go into a cafeteria and sit at the counter and eat. Just to be treated the same as whites. That's all they're asking for. And this is the answer they got. And it goes further than that. Next, please. A.G. Gasson Motel. They thought the leaders of the boycott were staying in this motel, so they bombed it. A.D. King, a pastor in the area, they knew he was involved, so the next picture below, that's what they did to his house. And these people are only asking for civil rights, to be treated the same, which the Constitution says we should have these rights. But this is what you get. When you're under Jim Crow law in Alabama, this is how you're thought of. When you ask to be treated the same as a white, this is what you get. It gets more tragic than that. Next, please, Dave. I think all of you read of the bombing of 16th Street Baptist Church. It was a large black Baptist church. They bombed it. 4 young black girls died because they were only asking for that civil right. Now, when this came out and the pictures came out, next please, Dave. Kennedy was the president then, and he initiated the Civil Rights Act. But he wasn't able to stay for the fulfillment because he was assassinated. But politicians have said that Kennedy was from the North, and no way was he going to get a Civil Rights Act passed because of the legislators of the South. They just wouldn't let him do it. So after he's assassinated, then the vice president, next please, Dave, is Lyndon B. Johnson. Lyndon B. Johnson was a master politician, and he was able to bring the Southern group together to meet the Northern legislators and thereby pass the Civil Rights Act of 1964. But do you see who's standing right behind him? Martin Luther King. Now he's on a roll. So next, please, Dave. Now he's on a roll, and here that's passed is the voting right of 1965, which gives us the right to vote. And do you see again whose hand he's getting ready to shake? Dr. Martin Luther King, who was a powerful force in the civil rights movement. And he'll never be forgotten and should not be forgotten for the impact he had upon our strive to have the Civil Rights and the Voting Rights Act. Next, please. Okay, so I just wanted to share that with you, even though it's vicarious. I wasn't there, I was in Europe. But now I'm back at McGuire Air Force Base, and I resigned my commission. I was a commission officer for 20 years, but one of the persons that had gone to dental school with me, we were going to set up a practice together. He went to Vietnam. He got killed on R&R. And I was told that all commission officers would spend at least 3 rotations in Vietnam. So I resigned my commission and I started a practice in Bridgeton, New Jersey. I was the only black dentist in the whole county. And so I practiced for 18 years. But in the latter part of those 18 years, you know, I was going to church, but it looked like God was pulling me into the ministry. He was calling me into the ministry. And so now I got a lot of pride now, you know, life has been good to me and I've taken all the credit. I haven't given God any of the credit of all the things that have happened. So I got bold with God and I propositioned him. I said, well, look, if you calling me into your service, give me a sign. So we went to New York on a Thursday. I'm in the swimming pool swimming. All of a sudden I lose sight in one eye. I come back to Wills Hospital on Sunday. Monday they operate. I had a detached retina, but it went through the macula of the eye. They could never put it back together. And I'm told on Monday, I'll never practice again. Now I think I had 2 Mercedes, a 2-door and a 4-door. My daughter who's talking was in Tufts. And at that time, Tufts was one of the most expensive schools. It was $14,000 a year. And I had a new house we had just built. So I literally cried from the state of Pennsylvania all the way over into New Jersey. But God, and I have to give him the credit now. And
Got to hear this though. Stop talking and making noise.
I know it's at 3% because of you. Literally, what you did, text you.
So I have to give him credit. There was a little young boy that had gone to Talladega. He was hanging around my office all the time trying to sell me some disability insurance. And I told him, no, I don't have time. Nothing's going to happen to me. I'm not buying any of that insurance. But he was persistent. And one day I was tired of him. I said, all right, write me up. Give me some disability. Well, 18 months later, I lose eyesight and lose the practice. You have to have 2 years from the time you sign that contract until you can use it. The insurance company tried to stop me from getting the payments. So I had to fight that fight. But I thank God, because after he took me out of dentistry, I didn't have to worry about losing everything because I had this disability insurance. And so now this allows me to answer his call. I attend on a part-time basis Philadelphia College of Bible, and then I spent 4 years in the Lutheran Theological Institute for my Master of Divinity. And then I pastored 4 years in New Jersey, and then I came to Defusky Island. I don't know if any of you heard of Defusky Island, but that's where I came to pastor. But we were living on Hilton Head Island. I think some of you've heard of Hilton Head Island, which is a resort here in South Carolina. So now, William, I hope I'm getting to the point where I'm going to answer your question now, okay? So next, please, Dave. That's the Lutheran Theological Institute in Philadelphia, where I got my Master of Divinity. Okay, next, please. Okay, so I come to Defusky. Defusky is an island that was owned by whites primarily until Sherman came through Atlanta burning everything. And so most of the whites left, and they left only blacks. But then with the passage of time, whites started coming back, building their second home and third homes, what have you. But during the time that they had the slaves, the little brown building you see on the right is where the slaves worshiped. It's called a praise house. Now that was rebuilt. When I got there, the termites had eaten the original building. So a white contractor that was attending the church said they could replace it, they could rebuild it. So this is the praise house rebuild of what the slaves worship in when they were slaves. Now, once they were freed, they got enough money to buy land, and they built the white building to the left. In that building today, the pews are still there that were built by former slaves. This entire building was built by former slaves. That's where I came. You had to come by ferry. That's the only way to get there. Now, the whites who had money, the ferry that I took over there had television, you had coffee, you had air conditioning. It wasn't just a rickety ferry. I mean, it was really well-class ferry. The seats were leather. That's what I went back and forth on. And there was a van there when I got there that would bring me to the church. And then when it finished, would take me back.
I don't skate now because I couldn't go to the skating room. I don't bowl now because I couldn't go to the bowling alley. But I'm so thankful to God that my children, when I explained to them that they won't ever have to go through what I went through. God bless you, and I can't wait to ever meet. I want to meet you.
Thank you
so very much for
and the
that.
same to you. Thank you.
I have a question real fast. I have a question.
That's my sister, Tracy Edmondson.
And I'm sorry because Salome's sitting here too. And I just have to ask William, you know, I know black don't crack, but when he said that he was sitting, he's been at the back of the bus, how old is he? He looks like he might be my age. And it could be, I mean, difference between New Jersey and West Virginia, it could be that maybe they still had some things in place that we did not.
I'll be 72 this June.
Wow, you look great.
He does.
Yeah, he does. That's my friend Lawrence. I'm William. That's Lawrence.
Oh, Lawrence, I'm sorry. You look great. You look great.
Does.
Okay. Yes, okay.
Because I was looking at him when he was talking. I said, man, this guy too young.
Right, that's what I said. Salome too. Salome's like, how old is he?
So, Dad, just somebody sent me a Miss Rushing. Good afternoon, Dr. Edmondson. My class and I really would like to finish the presentation with your father. I do have a suggestion, maybe record his voice to describe each slide with detail and send it out to the district teachers to use in the classroom. Your father has a wealth of information, and to just hear it from an individual who actually lived during that time is an amazing experience, live storytelling at its best. I will say this again, I will make certain that I get him out here as, you know, God willing, certainly if I can get him out here. We can also have this presentation. I know we have Dr. Coleman down there who would, I know his mind probably is spinning like, I got to get him at River Rouge schools. We're going to give you, you know, if the school district demands it, and that's what teachers want, and that's what students want, we will absolutely have you come back as soon as, you know, it warrants. But I would love for you to be able to talk to different classrooms. If teachers would like to set that up with you, that we could do this again where you're on their classroom, just their class, and however they would like you to do it, or however you're willing to do it, I would certainly do that. I know you're at 85 and I respect that. And if we could do that, I would love to do that. And maybe at the end of the year or the beginning of the year, like we did before, where we have everybody who gets to see you do it again.
In response to that, first of all, I'm honored that you would ask, but when you start speaking of the future, I don't even buy green bananas now at 85.
Now, you know, some people may not know what you mean, but that's hilarious. Usually we have Miss Piles here who usually has something to say, but Miss Kennard too. We have a couple of board members I'm not going to make them say, but at the board table, they have a lot to say, and they are definitely advocates for our community. So they're more than welcome. Dr. Laws, did you have your hand up? Dr. Laws?
I did. Thank you, Dr. Edmondson, and Reverend Dr. Edmondson. It's truly been a pleasure to hear you and hear you speak. Just really an honor to be in your presence. And I was thinking about, you know, you had the opportunity to see transformation in the United States like none of us could, you know, in your lifetime. Like none of us could ever imagine. We didn't live through it. And I was wondering, as you were talking, and you've lived through these times and changes throughout the years from Jim Crow, and then you look at the things that have happened in the last couple of years in this country, you know, especially with Black Lives Matter and everything that's happened. When you think about our young people now, today, and your perspective and your experiences, what would be the piece of advice that you would give our young people today about moving forward as we think about, you know, where can we continue to grow as a country, but what advice would you give them in terms of our young people and their role in continuing to help shape our country and bring people together? What thoughts do you have about that? Because I think your wise advice is just so I want to know what you think. I want time with you personally. Well, what would you tell our young people who are watching?
That's a good question, but if you would like, if I may take the prerogative to parenthetically say this, if you had told me when I was a student in high school or even college that one day there will be a black president of the United States, I would have told you you're out of your mind. Are you dreaming? If you were dreaming, know that's not a dream. It's a tragedy. There's just no way behind how I grew up, because I grew up being taught that I was a secondary student. And to one day live to see a black president of the United States, what a transition from where I was. But in terms of your question, I would advise any student to set a goal and do your best to achieve that goal. Now, when you set a goal, it doesn't mean you're going to always achieve it, but it means you're going to do something moving toward that goal that you wouldn't have done had you not set the goal. And that would be my advice. And don't be discouraged. Don't care what happens. Stay focused on that goal. And so let's assume that you set a goal that you want to achieve a literary doctorate. Well, you may get to a master's, but if you hadn't set the goal for a doctorate, you probably wouldn't have gotten to the master. A lot of people think when they don't achieve, they do not achieve that goal, that they're a failure. You're not. The minute you set a goal, you've made a difference in your life, because you're going to begin to do some things you would not have done had you not set that goal. And that's.
Are there any teachers that have any questions that maybe their students ask? Or I also forgot, I'm remiss. I see Miss Teresa Beard, who's a wonderful board member too, who might have a question. Naturally, you put your bosses out there and you acknowledge them, but does anybody else or teachers might have a question or two, or anybody else? Dr. Coleman, you representing River Rouge over there. You have any questions from the River Rouge community? Just a very dear friend of mine, Dr. Edmondson, Dr. Coleman, who is an alpha brother as well.
Oh,
6.
1906.
Yes, sir. No, as I stated in my chat question, I'm just humbled by your presence. And, it's phenomenal because you hear stories, but they just became so crystal. And the emotion to hear you describe those experiences and those pictures. I noticed that picture of you with the rocking chair, you ain't have shoes on.
Right, yeah. And
You
the
know,
summer
and so
months, we never wore them.
Yeah, exactly. So when you think of the experience and those things that we take for granted, I just want to salute you and thank you for everything you've done.
And thank you. Thank you.
And Dr. Edmond,
I got a question from our speech therapist. It's Paige Mile, and I had the beauty of being Paige's middle school principal, but she now works here as our speech pathologist or speech and language. She said she's just wondering, how does your father interpret the movement of Black Lives Matter today?
I admire the movement of Black Lives Matter because they've brought it from underneath the counter to be on top of the counter, where it's no longer hid. Some of the tragedies and some of the how can I say it? Some of the mistreatment that we receive as people of color now is brought out on top. And it can't be dealt with as long as it's a secret. And when it's brought out on top, everybody becomes aware of it. And I'm just going to move just a little bit further, if you would allow me, in that question. Some members of Congress over the past weekend can better identify with Blacks than they could before that weekend, because they now know what it is to be scared, to know there's an enemy, and they have guns and they have whatever. They know now, and I feel they'll be in a better position to empathize with the Black Lives Movement now because of what happened over the weekend. Once you, darkness, the purpose of light is to run away darkness. So before the Black Lives Movement, we were in darkness. But once we bring the light into it, then everybody becomes aware of it, and thereby you can have more participants in the movement to help it grow, to help right the unright, to help bring justice into areas where there are injustice because of that movement. And a lot of people will object to it simply because they cannot empathize. I've talked to some whites who didn't know what I was talking about. For instance, I'll say to the ones that I'm seeing now, have you ever applied for a job and you didn't get it, and you had to ask yourself, did I not get it because I'm white? I don't think so. But we do. We do. So, and you can't empathize. When we tell you that, you can't empathize because it never happened to you. And that brings me again back to the past weekend. With some of the members of Congress now, they'll be able to empathize with what it is to be in a situation where you're captive and you're being threatened and intimidated.
Wow, that's deep. We have a teacher, Diane England, that said, thank you for setting up the presentation. In college, I was able to personally meet James Baldwin for a small group discussion. I would rather have listened to your father's discussion shared today. Your father shared his thoughts and feelings with poise, dignity, and class. Thank you again for this assembly. I hope we have more. For me, in my closing, and I'm certainly not saying that you can't ask a question, all my adult life, I've always had to deal with, you so arrogant, you're so pop. You hear it all the time. And what I said to people, and they can't empathize. I had a father in my home who was professional. I had a father in my home who taught me this is what we can be, as did my sister and my brother. There was no excuse for us to be able to think that we couldn't succeed. And my father taught me from day one, when you have a doctorate, you're always still black. Actually, he would say, you're still a nigga. That's how he said, hey, don't ever think that you're not. And I don't ever think that I'm not. But I had a father in my home who was highly successful. When you grow up and you have an indoor pool, a built-in pool in the back of your house, Dad gave us a choice of, you want a pool table or a in-ground pool? And my sister and I outvoted my brother. So we got the in-ground pool. We've always had Mercedes, Peugeots, Lexus, as soon as they came out. I say, I don't know the poor black story, but I will always know the black story. So what do you expect when the expectations for black men are so low, because many of them don't have somebody in their home like that? That's what you expect from black men. You expect them to stay there and understand where they're supposed to be, until you start having a father in your home that you see every doggone day who wears a suit and tie and goes to work every day and teaches you about a work ethic. So I'm always unapologetic. Sorry that people think that there's arrogance. To me, it's about having a father who raised the standard for black men. If that was the standard for black men, you would never call us arrogant, ever. It's that the reality is the standards are here. So the one or two of us, Dr. Coleman, Dr. Hawkins knows, Mr. Kern, we know that the standard's here. If the standard were here, we wouldn't have a problem. But the problem is this gap, the gap between this and the gap between this. Right in between here is where people have a problem with us. And that's all I say. I had a father, and I can always tell which kids do, because they act a little bit differently than what we're accustomed to for young black boys. So I thank you, Dad. And my mother is instrumental in my life too. So I don't ever talk about my dad without speaking about my mother as well, who was instrumental in giving me the confidence that I needed as a young black boy growing up in a school where we know, my sister and I know, there weren't a lot of blacks. And we actually got put into a couple schools where we were the few that we were the tokens, I would say. Okay. But my dad taught us how to navigate the white world. And that's what we're able to do. is to navigate the white world to be successful as Black people because we have no choice. That's me. If I had a mic, I would drop it, but I don't. Anybody else, and then we'll get done. Ken, it's great to see you. We'll see you on Monday as well. You and I can talk a little bit about what that would look like. Anybody else that would consider having Dr. Clarence Edmondson or Reverend Dr. Clarence Edmondson, all you have to do is contact me. You know, I'm a regular dude. So whatever you need, I'll make sure that I go through him. And, you know, if we can give you a little love offering, I certainly will, Dr. Edmondson, for your effort in going with us for now 2 hours. I know you expected 45 minutes.
Yes, I did. Yes.
But you did well. Last one. Anybody else? Piles, Kennard, Beard? Anybody from our central administration? I'd like to see if my son is on here. Are you there? Can we hear from you? Are you there? Or you just you're not there? That's Pierce.
I'm just listening right now. I'm just listening. I can't really.
That's my son.
Yeah, I'm just listening.
Hey, Ben.
Yes.
I'm just wondering if I'm too old to be adopted by your father.
I know, right?
Hey, there's lots of spankings you got to go through first, mother. We got spanked. Debbie Powell, please, Vice President of the school board.
Hey, Ben.
Reverend Dr. Edmondson, I just want to thank you so much for your time with us today. I know I was excited when Ben shared with us that you would be in our district, and I knew that having the opportunity to listen to someone with firsthand experience would just be invaluable. But as excited as I was, I truly underestimated just how humbling this would be and what this experience would be. And I thank you for your time. I thank you for your transparency. I really hope that you will be a return guest speaker in our district, because the live storytelling is something that we can all learn from, regardless of students, teachers, adults, and regardless of our role in the district. So, sir, thank you very much. I am most humbled and appreciative that you were with us today.
Thank you. That's Debbie, is it? Is it Debbie?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, Debbie. I appreciate it.
Dr. Edmondson, my name is Angela Broad, and how are you?
I'm blessed. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you, sir. I want to say I am truly blessed and thankful to hear from you today.
Thank you.
And I want to thank you for all of the history that you have brought to us. So thank you so very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Angela, thank you.
From a board member, trustee, Miss Judy Kennard, former president of the school board, asked, what is your thoughts about our first African-American female VP elect? On how will it, she wants to know, how do you think it will impact our lives today and in the future for those female students, such as your daughter, dreams of attaining their dreams and goals to sit one day on the same platform, if not as vice president, but president? Is it attainable or is it nonsense to think so?
Well, directly, I can answer that. If there had been a Black president when I was a young boy, I could have set that as my goal. At least for a young Black female now, they can set that goal at least to being the vice president of the United States, because they have an example to follow. I would think that would be very encouraging to any young Black female that, you know, when I was a young boy there, when you got to be a teacher, you would bow at the ceiling, the glass, what they call it, the glass ceiling, a Black having finished 4 years of college and you're a teacher. But now look what they can look at. The average girl in my classes then wanted to be a teacher. You know why? Because that's who they saw and that's who they could emulate. But if a young Black girl now is seeing Kamala as the vice president of the United States, they should set that goal to be president based on her being there. So that's my thoughts on that, that they certainly can raise their ambition and raise their goal setting just by the example that's before them.
We have a student dad. This is different, which I appreciate. Miss Mackenzie Vanover. I don't know what the rest says. How long did you attend college total? Oh, master.
About 18 years.
Like goodness gracious.
Yeah, about 18 years.
And how many degrees?
Well, the BA, the DDS, and the MDiv, so 3.
Well, you're saying it as those students necessarily know what that is.
Master
So,
of Divinity,
yes.
Doctor of Dental Surgery, and then Bachelor of Arts.
3 degrees, 18 years total. Okay, so I'm going to give a follow-up for a student. When a student today says it's not worth going to college, how do you rebut that based on your life and what you've been able to accomplish financially as well?
You asking me?
Yes.
Oh, repeat it, please. I thought you were asking this student.
For you, a follow-up question is when you hear students say, I'm not going to college, it's not worth it. What is your response to that, having been through college, but knowing that though it was $700 there, it still looks, that's a lot of money, $700 then, and now you're talking $40,000 and $50,000 a year. What is your response to any student that says it's not worth going to college?
Well, I wish I could show them, because Fairfield, the main source of industry at Fairfield was coal mining, a steel mill, and a wire mill. Once they closed down, the source of the production for any young person went away. And so I go back now, I see some of the kids that were there with me that stayed because they were working in the wire mill or what have you. And to see them today, that's all I have to do to know that it was what I did was worthwhile. Now she can't see that, but and it's a long struggle, it's a hard struggle. But once you have achieved that goal, it will afford you opportunities that a non-education could not offer you. Now, for a student, I don't know if they understand that, but let me try and put it in a materialistic sense. If you don't go to school, maybe your job will allow you to get a Ford or even a Mustang. If you go to school, depending on your degree or what have you, you can have a Rolls Royce, Mercedes, or what have you. Now, what's the difference in those? I'm trying to put it so the student can understand it. And I hope that helps them to understand the difference in going and not going.
Excellent. I got another one just from a teacher who said she couldn't get, unfortunately, Kathy Balcom said, unfortunately, she wasn't able to get her 3rd hour on. She hopes that you can visit, but she has posted to her Google Classroom. Your biggest advice is to set a goal and not to let anything or anyone get in the way of their achievement of it. But she said she hopes that you can come and be able to speak to her class about that because they need to hear it.
Okay.
So thank you so much, Dad. And thank you to our staff. And thank you, in spite of the glitches, I'm going to have a good conversation with Mr. Cooper about that. But, most of you that know me know I'm always going to keep it real. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. We have some work to do in our district in terms of thinking and making certain that our students are presented these opportunities so immaturity is not a problem. The more that we present, the better prepared they are to have these type of questions and be able to handle them as well. I want to thank my colleagues for being here. The Board of Education, Ms. Ursula Wester. I see that you were here. I didn't see your face here, so I didn't get to mention you. We had 4 of our board members, to my knowledge, offhand, that were here, Dad. So I thank you. And to our staff and everybody that had such a gracious attitude in spite of the, in spite of the dilemma. He did say it to me and Coop, and I was like, we're not going to have any problems. We're not going to have any problems today. We good. I'm with the director of integrated technology. We got this. Still happened. Everybody was gracious about it.
May I be allowed to say one thing, please?
Yeah, well, let me ask, may I publish your email account? Is that all right for people?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Even students?
Yeah.
Okay. And if you see anything appropriate, just give me the number. And I'm certain that there won't be. I'm more,
I don't know whether I should say this or not, but
I'm gonna get scared. I know when it don't make it now. Come on now.
I heard you allude to the board members, and I know the board members where you were before. And so many times in the short time that you've been there, you've told me how happy you are where you are and what a board you have and how the board is working with you and how they're making life better for you. So as a father, while I have the opportunity, I want to thank the board for making your job a pleasant job and an enjoyable job where you can be most productive.
Appreciate that.
That's it.
So naturally, one other one comes in. So I got to ask, since it's a board member, ask your dad to share something about you that we should know.
That you shouldn't or should?
That they should know.
Well, I don't know. I don't know about that. I know so much. I don't know about that. They should know that you are a dedicated, energized person. They should know that.
I'll accept that. DC, I wasn't going to ask you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much, Dad. You know, I love you. I can say that in front of everybody.
Thank you again.
Love you. Thank you, Tracy, my sister. Thank you for being here and supporting me and supporting Dad. Really,
thank you for the invite. Salome says thank you too.
That's great.
And
As
I
my
pray
son.
that everybody that was listening will have a fruitful year this year.
Yeah, thank you, and safe. So everybody, thank you, and we'll do our best. I'll keep in touch. I'll work with Dr. Laws and seeing how we can bring you back in some instructional capacity, and see if we can actually get you here. But if not, I'll work with the high school staff as well and the middle school staff that would like to do a Google Meet, and you can just get into their classrooms. I think that would be very, very informative for plenty of our students that feel that they missed out. Okay. All right. Everybody be safe. Thank you again. If you need me, you know how to reach me. Have a great weekend.
Okay. Bye-bye. Yes. Turn it off.